Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Light Sports Ramble. As you can see, there is paper in front of you tonight. That's because I had to write down all of the records. So you're not going to get the ramble in the car tonight. I tried this outside a little bit ago, and the wind was just horrid. The wind made the audio terrible, and you couldn't even hear me talk. So I'm like, I can't put my listeners through that. So I went up into my loft, pulled up a box, put my papers on it. I now have my notes. And before I get into this, I want everybody to realize something. Before I did my rambles and said where everyone was going to finish, that wasn't just off the top of my head and off the cuff and say, well, I think they're going to finish here. I went through the NFL schedule, week 1 through week 17. And I put W's and L's next to each game. That is how I came up with those predictions. Now, with that said, we have to remember this. This is all based on paper. Teams that look good on paper. Free agent pickups, the draft, new coaches, new schemes. We all know what the preseason holds. There's going to be an injury somewhere in the NFL this preseason, and we hate to see it. And we don't know who it's going to be. But that injury could change these predictions in a heartbeat. And then also, a team may just not mesh together in the preseason, and it can also change the outcome. But with that said, these are my preseason predictions. And they could change. And I may come back in another ramble and say, hey, I was totally wrong. But let's move into it. As we start with the NFC, we're going to start with the NFC West. The Seahawks come in first place at 12-4. The 49ers at 10-6. The Rams at 7-9. The Cardinals at 4-12. The Seahawks did a bunch of good things on defense. And I think defensively in that division, they will finally take over the 49ers. The Niners have a tough schedule. When I went through it, I think Kaepernick's going to have a great year. And I think the Rams are just a few playmakers away from winning a few of those close games that I saw. And the Cardinals, you just got to get a lot more pieces in place there. Bruce Arians, I think you're going to be on the right track. NFC North. Got the Packers at 10-6, the Vikings at 8-8, the Bears at 6-10, the Lions at 5-11. The Packers' schedule is just killer. It's home away, home away. The bye is early in the season, which is going to come back and hurt them. And I just don't see them getting more than 10 wins this year. The Vikings, I said this in the ramble, I just don't think you have a quarterback. You're signing free agents. I just don't think you have enough there offensively. I don't think Peterson can do another 2,000 yards. The Bears, too many question marks. Jay Cutler's in a contract year, could play well, but I don't see a lot of weapons for him to be that successful. Yeah, you got Forte and you got Marshall, but I'm not going to get into the ramble part of it. The Lions just going to underachieve again. When I look on paper, you have talent. But part of my decision-making in wins and losses is partly the North Division. It's a tough division to play in. But I don't think Jim Schwartz has control of that team anymore. In the NFC South, I think the Falcons are still going to remain on top at 13-3, but the Buccaneers are going to come in at 12-4. They've done a lot defensively. But I still think we need Freeman to play consistently. And maybe if he does that, they can overtake the Falcons. The Saints, with Peyton coming back, are going to finish 10-6. But there's a lot of holes, and that may be a gracious record. I may be going just because you have Breeze. 10-6 could just as easily be 8-8. And the Panthers at 3-13, I saw a lot of close games. My problem is I don't see the playmakers on offense. I don't see a situation at running back, and I talked about it in the Ramble. That's why you're 3-13 in my mind. The NFC East, I had mentioned, very competitive. This is the division where you talk about football, pure football, knocking each other out. And it's tough. You need to hold ground at home. You need to go out on the road. And it's just tough division. I didn't say the best division. I said a tough division. I see the Giants winning the division at 8-8, the Redskins at 7-9, the Cowboys at 7-9, the Eagles at 6-10. I mentioned in the previous Ramble, this could be a four-way tie for first place, and that's not inconceivable. When I looked at the schedule, it could very well happen. But I think with Eli Manning there, he's going to get enough wins to have them win the division and win one of those games on the road that's going to be necessary. So that brings us to the playoffs. And as I stated, the Falcons and the Seahawks will get the first round byes. The Packers will be the 3 seed. The Giants will be the 4 seed. Giants will host the Buccaneers. The Packers will host the 49ers. Buccaneers at Giants. It's a great run, Buccaneers fans, into the playoffs, but going to New York to a team that is used to the playoffs. And I think Eli comes away with the win in New York, even though the Buccaneers have more talent. 49ers Packers rematch of last year's playoff game, different venue. You're now in Lambeau Field, and I know people will say, well, the Packers don't have the mystique and the home field advantage, but this is going to be different, a revenge factor. They will not let Kaepernick take advantage of them at home. I see the Packers getting the win in the first round at Lambeau Field. Which brings us into the divisional playoff. The Packers are going to go to Seattle. The Giants are going to go to Atlanta. And this hurts me as a Packer fan to say when they go to Seattle, the rematch of that horrid Monday night game, I don't see Green Bay winning in Seattle in the playoffs. Seattle is a phenomenal team at home, and I just don't see them winning in Seattle. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think Seattle pulls it out again. Hopefully, not on a bad call. The Giants going to Atlanta. Matt Ryan, I am finally going to jump on your bandwagon and say, you're going to win in the playoffs. And here you go. Here's your chance. Take care of the Giants. Go to the NFC Championship game. And so we have Seattle going to Atlanta. And again, Matt Ryan, I'm on the bandwagon. I'm there. So play well and defeat the Seahawks in Atlanta because you could very well have the best offense in the NFC. And I know Seattle, you went out defensively and made a lot of moves, but I think in Atlanta, you're going to be outmatched. I think the Falcons go to the Super Bowl. Bringing us to the AFC. We start in the AFC West. Denver is the clear-cut favorite on paper. We all know that. When I went through the schedule, I see 13-3 coming up. I see the Chiefs getting a lot better, 8-8, which is a huge improvement. The Chargers and Raiders, 6-10, respectively. And I say that because I think both organizations are in a rebuilding year. The AFC North, my surprise team, because of all the losses, are the Steelers. I said they were going to win the division. I see them going 12-4. I see Mike Tomlin being so crazy mad about last year that he makes some changes. And I think Mike Wallace, again, him leaving was a blessing for Pittsburgh. Because I like Sanders and Brown. I think they go 12-4. The Ravens, the defending Super Bowl champions, going to fall in at 10-6. I just see a lot of close games, and I see that defense is not the same. A lot of changes. I see some losses coming. The Bengals 9-7, was a tough one. A lot of tough decisions in games. I think the 9-7 could very well be that 12-4. But it all depends on Dalton. It all depends on him. The Browns are going to be 5-11, and I think they're rebuilding. I think some pieces are in place. So sorry, Cleveland fans, you're going to have to endure another losing season. Going to the South, I think we've got a two-team competition here, the Texans and the Colts. But like I said, I think the Texans' defense much better than the Colts. I see them finishing at 13-3, but the Colts right there at 12-4. And I think Andrew Luck has a chance to really have a breakout year in his sophomore year. No slump going on there. Titans at 5-11. Just don't see a lot. And the lowly Jags, I'm actually giving you 2 wins. Because you had to play the Bills one time, and you had to play the Jets. So you're 2-14. Going to the AFC East, we all know the problems in New England. But you know what? You got to give Belichick his props. As many people that hate the man, he runs a good organization. Everybody knows who's in charge, and they will overcome the off-the-field issues. And when you look at the schedule, they have some tough games, but it's New England, and I think they finished 13-3. The Dolphins, I think, make major improvements to 9-7. And I think there's a couple games that I question. They could be a double-digit win team. I look at the Bills and the Jets, and I said in the Ramble, flip-flop, I don't care what you do. I got the Bills winning 3, going 3-13. The Jets going 2-14. So that brings us to the playoffs. And it brings us to the Patriots and Steelers hosting first-round games. The Ravens going to New England. And I think the Ravens beat New England in New England just because they feel that they're the defending Super Bowl champions. They got the swag. They're going to go in, dismantle the Patriots because they will actually have more people healthy at the end of the year and more weapons to go to. The Colts are going to go to Pittsburgh, and unfortunately, Colts fans, the worst draw you could imagine in the playoffs. Going to Pittsburgh in the first round, I don't think Andrew Luck has seen anything like this. Living in Pittsburgh for 7 years, I think the Pittsburghs hold home field advantage, take care of the Colts, and move on to the divisional round. And so the Ravens head back to Denver in this famous rematch. But guess what, Joe Flacco? Not this time. Peyton Manning has too many weapons this year, and they're actually going to take care of you, I think, pretty easily in this game to get to the AFC Championship. The Steelers going to Houston. I think Houston's defense going to be too much for Big Ben. Going to shut them down. And I think it becomes Houston at Denver, AFC Championship. And again, too many weapons in Denver. I think Peyton Manning gets a shot at a second ring. They represent the AFC. So it's the Falcons versus the Broncos in New York. An outdoor game, and it is going to be cold. It is going to be frigid cold out there, folks. And guess what? You got Atlanta, the Dome team. You got Peyton Manning from Denver. I'm just going to say, Peyton, you win your second ring. Are you going to retire? Or are you going to pull a John Elway and try to come back and repeat? That decision's on your shoulders. So again, people, these predictions are based off paper. Free agent moves, the draft. We haven't even had a game yet in preseason. But I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you at the next red light. Enjoy the evening, everyone. Talk to you tomorrow.